Guns as Symbols. Anthony Sampson, in his book The Arms Bazaar, From Lebanon to Lockheed, informs us that the word weapon was until the 14th century synonymous with penis. There are now 25,000 handgun deaths per year in the United States of America. The President of the U.S. in 1975 was subjected to 2 assassination attempts in a time span of 3 weeks. Handguns were the instrument used in each assassination attempt. The same president was against handgun control. The above statements are laden with highly significant meaning, which is not immediately apparent and which can be understood fully only when the underlying psychodynamics of the collective white psyche and of the white supremacy power system and its culture are probed, dissected, and revealed. Joseph Kraft, writing in the September 25, 1975 issue of the Washington Post, stated, "The starting point for analysis is the recognition that, for better or for worse, the United States is a country with a thing about guns. Prowess with firearms was critical to survival in the frontier days. The right to bear arms is guaranteed in the Constitution. Millions of Americans regard hunting as a favorite recreation. Thousands collect guns as souvenirs. I once visited the home in Mechanicsburg, Ohio, of a prominent official. In this home, no wall was uncovered by some kind of rifle, shotgun, pistol, or musket. The owner, William Saxby, eventually became Attorney General. Mr. Kraft later used the term pro-gun culture to describe American culture and society, as he cited that there have been no fewer than 5 different presidential commissions that have recommended more stringent forms of gun control. While recognizing, along with Mr. Kraft, the predominant use of guns in the American frontier days, I strongly disagree that guns were needed for survival in the simple terms of the continuation of life. After all, the Native Americans taught the Europeans how to grow corn to feed themselves and survive. Guns were needed, however, if Native Americans were going to be removed successfully from the land that the Europeans wished to dominate and control. This essay is being written neither in review nor in protest of the horrendous carnage of Native American life in particular, nor in protest of the general path of carnage that has been tread in this area of the world. It is being written in hopes of shedding light on the seeming dilemma that, in spite of the past and present potential carnage from handguns, there is tremendous resistance amongst the dominant population to have guns as well as all other instruments of life destruction brought under control. In my view, the gun is a critical symbol in the subconscious mind of white peoples everywhere. This symbol is primarily operative, as are all true symbols at the unconscious level of brain activity. Increasing numbers of black behavioral scientists are beginning to understand that the dominant thrust in what has become known as Western civilization is racism. Once we become aware of the deep humiliation that is apparently felt by whites because of their skin whiteness and because of their genetic vulnerability, when compared to non-whites, it is possible to understand the historically degraded status of sex in the white supremacy system culture. Sex is the act of self-reproduction, and the act responsible for the production of the self and the appearance of the self. In the white brain computer, if the white, pale, genetically vulnerable self is degraded, then the act that produced that self will be degraded in that same brain computer. An example by a famous Western author of what whites have thought consciously about white skin is presented by Mark Twain, who, in his essay Skin Deep from on the Damned Human Race, stated, "Then there would have been the added disadvantage of the white complexion. It is not an unbearably unpleasant complexion when it keeps to itself, but when it comes into competition with masses of brown and black, the fact is betrayed that it is endurable only because we are used to it, ... Nearly all black and brown skins are beautiful, but a beautiful white skin is rare. How rare, one may learn by walking down a street in Paris, New York, or London on a weekday, particularly an unfashionable street, and keeping count of the satisfactory complexions encountered in the course of a mile. Where dark complexions are masked, they make the white look bleached out, unwholesome, and sometimes, frankly, ghastly. The acts of self-production and self-reproduction are not the only targets of degradation in the white psyche. Within the thought and logic processes of the white psyche, the genitals themselves are degraded, both male and female genitals, those parts of the anatomy and physiology that are responsible for self-production and self-reproduction. Especially, the white male sexual apparatus is seen as inferior and inadequate when compared to the sexual apparatus of the black male. In the May 1977 issue of Medical Aspects of Human Sexuality, in an article entitled "Men's Fear of Having Too Small a Penis," Povel W. Tusiang, MD, writes, "A surprisingly large number of men fear that their penises are not of adequate size. Although Tusiang makes no reference to the race or color of the men he interviewed, it is known in clinical practice that this is not a major fear of black men. However, he does state, it is hard to determine the exact origin of the myth of the big penis. In many cultures such as ancient Egypt, the penis did become a fertility symbol and was consequently pictured with enormous dimensions. In classic Greece, however, small genitals were considered more beautiful than larger ones. Romans reversed this concept, and Western culture appears by and large to have followed them. It is interesting that Tusiang makes no mention of any attempt to measure the penis size of white and black men in a culture heavily laden with this specific white male preoccupation, a culture in which large numbers of white males are daily in close proximity to black males and aware of their presence in the society, especially in the arena of sports, where black males dominate. Interestingly, Clyde Keeler, writing on albinism in an article entitled Kuna Moonchild Albinism, 19,501,970 states, "The voice quality of albino males is soft and higher pitched than in merino males. In addition, they appear to be deficient in sex hormone, and while they may be fertile, they have a lower phallic posture due to flaccidity. Albinos usually have flabby muscles and reduced muscular strength as shown by manometer readings. This is of interest because, in my view, all skin whiteness is related to albinism or a variant thereof." Keeler's observation implies that there may be a genetic association between albino or white skin color and the appearance and posture of the penis. Also, it is known that in comparison to the black population, whites have less muscle definition, thus muscular flabbiness, compared to blacks. It may be said that most fundamentally there is a genetic basis and secondarily an anatomic and physiologic basis for the white fear of white genetic annihilation. This, in turn, became the basis for the global system of white supremacy domination and its attendant culture. A system and culture evolved and structured to prevent white genetic annihilation and to ensure white genetic survival. Indeed, if the understood threat to white genetic survival was the black male's genital apparatus, consciously or unconsciously, the white psyche would be compelled to produce a weapon of defense of comparable or greater power than that of the black male's penis and testicles. It should be made clear here that black male's genital apparatus is the most feared relative to the genital apparatus of other non-white males because in possessing the greatest potential to produce melanin, the pigment responsible for all true skin coloration, black males have the greatest genetic potential to annihilate the global white minority. The individual and collective white brain computer, given that task of solving the global problem of white genetic survival, eventually evolved a solution in the form of a technology that would address the specific issue of white genetic and genital weakness or inadequacy. Technology always is developed to take over at the point of the human organism's anatomical and physiological limitation. Thus, the white brain computer printout was a weapon that would be the exact symbolic replica of the male genitalia, a weapon that would take over at the point of limitation of the white male genital apparatus, an apparatus that had the very specific limitation of being unable to annihilate blacks and other people of color genetically. Diagrams IV illustrate what I am stating. Is it not apparent that this is the same side view of the penis and the testicles that are the basis for the form and structure of the gun? This same lateral view in abstract form of the penis and testicles was the symbol for the World Fair held in New York, 1941 to 1942. With all of the above in mind, let us again return to the gun. Upon brief reflection, it will be noted that traditionally in the white supremacy culture, guns are worn on one or both hips of the male, at the exact level of the male genitals. It is no accident that in this culture the act of ejaculating is often referred to as shooting off. When the man wearing a gun in a holster is viewed laterally, the gun appears exactly as the side view of the penis and testicles. If guns are worn on both hips and brought together centrally on the belt to the vertical midline of the body, they present the full face view of the penis and both testicles. In the U.S., the most popular hero has been the gunfighter, now the present-day detective or lawman. The first chapter of Paul Trachtman's book, The Gunfighters, is entitled The Deadly Brotherhood of the Gun. The gunfighters came into prominence following the close of the Civil War. Most of the gunfighters were Southerners who felt humiliated by the loss of their slaves and the war, and by the temporary appearance of power held by blacks who were their former black slaves. The resulting deep sense of white male insecurity and inadequacy was compensated for by the obsessive use of the gun. This was the era of Fraught, and Jesse James, Billy the Kid, and a host of others, for whom the gun made up for a sense of profound and deep inadequacy, hidden by a thorough and ruthless exterior. That the lives of others were treated with little value merely reflected the failed sense of adequacy and diminished sense of importance in their own lives. During the same period, the gory sport of cockfighting was highly popular and important as a diversion among ranchers in the West. Thus, it is not surprising that the white male also referred to his penis as a cock, or that when a gun is prepared for firing, it is first cocked. In this area of the world, in the white supremacy system, a detective who always carries a gun is a most important hero. The detective with his gun has been referred to as a dick. From this came the longtime comic strip hero detective, Dick Tracy. The white male also has referred to his penis as a dick, and it cannot be ignored that the first child all American children still meet in primary public school is a white male child named Dick, along with his sister Jane. In effect, at this early age, the white male child is being instructed to recognize that his identity is synonymous with penis. These symbolic reinforcements continue until his death. That is why there is a continuing necessity for gun violence via television for American children. All of the above has been stated not only to point out a basic preoccupation of the white supremacy system, culture with the threat of white genetic annihilation, but more importantly, to shed light on why there cannot and will not be gun control or weapon control in the global white supremacy system culture. With the gun being the symbolic genitalia of the white male, gun control would represent white male castration. Such gun control would spell the immediate end of white genetic survival on Earth. John Ellis, in his book The Social History of the Machine Gun, states, "In Africa, small parties of Europeans, soldiers and armed settlers often had to face the resistance of large numbers of poorly armed natives. The odds were so in favor of the natives that the white men were obliged to adopt all weapons that would help to maximize their firepower ... in all parts of the continent, against Zulus, Dervishes, Hereros, Matabele, and many other peoples, Gatlings, Gardeners, and Maxims, side down anyone who dared to stand in the way of the imperialist advance. Without the handful of machine guns, the British South Africa Company might have lost Rhodesia, Lugard might have been driven out of Uganda, and the Germans out of Tanganyika. Without Hiram Maxim, much of subsequent world history might have been very different." Ellis remarks further, "In Africa, automatic weapons were used to support the seizure of millions of square miles of land, and to discipline those unfortunates who wished to eschew the benefits of European civilization. With machine guns in their armory, mere handfuls of white men, plunderers and visionaries, civilians and soldiers were able to scoff at the objections of the Africans themselves and impose their rule on a whole continent. Thus, in this area of the white supremacy system, where in 1975 there were 25,000 deaths caused by guns, there cannot be gun control. Guns and missiles are viewed as essential aspects of white male anatomy and physiology. Is it an accident that in the U.S. white male children learn to use guns before they learn to use their penises, while black male children learn to use their penises before they learn to use guns?" I will close with further observations. Following a lecture that I presented in Los Angeles, California in May 1977, in which I included a discussion on the symbolism of the gun in the white male psyche, a white male in the audience pointed out the parallel symbolism in the large black umbrella often carried by white males in the white supremacy culture. I agreed that his observation seemed to be a valid one. The long black umbrella, carried everywhere, became a part of the standard dress of the well-to-do Englishman at a time when it was said that the sun never sets on the British Empire. Of course, this great empire consisted of control over vast numbers of non-white men and their genitals that had the power to annihilate whites. The white man's traditional long black umbrella said, in effect, "I also have a large black phallus, or at least a phallic symbol that denotes my importance and power, and a power over the black male genital apparatus." The same symbolism explains a recent murder in Washington, D.C. A white male shot a white female companion in the mouth, as she was in bed with two other white females engaged in sexual activity that all four had been involved in earlier. As the white female victim was engaged in being sexually pleasured by two white females, the white male who was left out, feeling genitally rejected and inadequate compared to two females, pulled out and used his preferred symbolic penis, the gun.